The protagonist of the story, Day, lost his comrades in the war to protect humanity. Witnessing their deaths before his eyes caused Day to lose control of his powers, and at that moment, he awakened the power of the Ice Sword Wizard. Ignoring all the sad memories, a few years later, Day enrolled in the magic school to enjoy his youth. At this time, a girl with blue hair bumped into Day from behind, but Day immediately caught her. Initially, she seemed shy and happy, but when she realized Day was just a commoner, she showed contempt. While Day was confused, 4 noblemen arrived. The leader said that this was a school only for nobles, and commoners like Day were not qualified to study there. Seeing that Day didn't care, he intended to teach him a lesson. At that moment, a girl with red hair appeared, frightening the 4 noblemen. Her name was Rose Amelia, and she was a princess of the 3 great noble families. Rose approached Day to introduce herself, and said that if the others dared to cause trouble, she was always ready to help. A little while later, the opening ceremony at the school took place, and the headmistress was giving a speech to all the students. She said that this was a prestigious school, and that the students were all the best wizards, but everyone should not be complacent, and must always strive to improve themselves. Following that was Amelia's speech. She represented all the students and promised to abide by the headmistress's advice. Next, Day introduced himself to everyone in the class. As the first commoner to attend the school, all the students looked down on Day openly. Only one blonde-haired young man and Amelia paid attention to Day's speech. Day's familiarity with the professor and Princess Amelia made the other students even more annoyed. Returning to his seat, Day looked out at the city and recalled the painful past of a few years ago. Seeing him lost in thought, the professor threw him a piece of chalk to help him concentrate. At this point, the professor called Amelia to stand up and explained the wizarding ranks. She said the ranks were divided into bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. The highest rank is supreme. It consists of 7 people known as the 7 greatest mages in the world. The first is the fire-winged witch, who is the headmaster of the school. The second is the enchantress named Carol. The Ice Sword Witch disappeared in a war a few years ago, but no one knows that he is sitting at the back of the class. The other witches do not reveal their identities. After hearing this, the green-haired boy stood up and questioned why a commoner was allowed to attend this prestigious school, which angered the professor, who repeated that the boy had passed the school's interview. The class then entered the magic practice session. After the professor explained the step-by-step mechanism for creating magic, she demonstrated once by creating ice roses and then dissolving them, much to the amazement of the students. Only Amelia remained calm and asked the professor if there were any limitations to the magic she had just performed. The professor explained that there would be limitations depending on the power of the person performing it. At this point, another student spoke up, saying that she, professor, created and removed the rose, surprised Day and the other students. Entering the practical session, Amelia easily created a rose following the professor's instructions, while Day could only create a small, ice-like object, as if it had just been taken out of the refrigerator. Seeing Day's apparent incompetence, yet still being allowed to study there, Day couldn't help but feel resentful. The practical session ended immediately, and Day encountered the girl from earlier. Seeing that she wasn't an ordinary person, Day approached her to introduce herself. Elisa introduced herself as Elisa, and said she was somewhat shy compared to others, but Day couldn't help but admire Elisa's passion for studying magic. After talking for a while, Day discovered that the girl had elf ears. Because of her unusual ears, she always had to wear a hat and appear invisible in class. Day said that her ears were very beautiful, and she didn't need to hide them anymore. Elisa was very happy and grateful. She thanked Day, and the two said goodbye and went home. When they arrived back at their room, Jay met his roommate Evie, and the two seemed to get along very well, both possessing strong muscles and good physiques. The next morning, Jay woke up very early to exercise on campus. There, he befriended a senior from the 3 great noble families named Rebecca. He then told Evie about it and wondered about the power of the 3 great noble families. Evie explained that the 3 great noble families were families with significant influence on the country's economy. After talking for a while, Jay said goodbye to Evie to go to the professor's office because he had been called. Just as he arrived, a blonde girl bumped into him. Although she initially blamed Jay for not avoiding her, when Jay complimented her on her cute pigtails, she seemed delighted. She then introduced herself as Clarice and said goodbye because she was in a hurry. Jay then went to see the principal, and the two reminisced about their time together in the military. But time was running out, as it was time for the next class. The teacher asked Jay and ALB to come up. To spar because he'd been resentful of Day since arriving, Jay had to take this opportunity to teach Day a lesson, but this weakling was no match for Day and was easily defeated. The principal was very happy that Day had overcome the pain of the battlefield and was enjoying life here. That night, Jay and Evie returned to their room and continued training together. Jay shared that he would be joining 2 school clubs. Evie wanted to stop Day because she was worried he would have to work too hard, but Day had already prepared himself. The first club was the Environmental Investigation Hunters Group, whose members were all muscular young men. When they saw Day wanted to join, they laughed at him, saying he looked quite weak, but Day didn't let them look down on him. Day showed off his body, which had been trained for many years, along with his golden hunter card, identical to that of the hunter group leader. Seeing that Day seemed to have strength, the club president immediately accepted him into the group. Next, Day went to the Flower Care Club, where Rebecca was the president. He loved flowers and how they survived in harsh environments. But since he was the only boy there, Dina objected, fearing Day might be interested. He was trying to flirt with Rebecca, but Rebecca said she would let Dina test whether Day was suitable for the club. Dina then led Day to the rooftop of the building and said his test would be to clear the weeds within a week so they could plant new flowers. She thought Day would give up and leave the club, but in just 3 days, Day had cleared the weeds by himself. He also tilled the soil and built rows of bricks to divide the area, ready for planting flowers. Rebecca came to check and was surprised. She brought Day some cakes and asked about his progress. Just then, they heard the sound of wooden swords clashing in the courtyard. Rebecca said that the magic swordsman competition was coming up, so the students were diligently practicing. At this moment, she also noticed Day's muscles and wanted to touch them to satisfy her craving. It's true that boys' muscles are different, just touching them feels good. By the 4th day, the flower garden was completed, much to the surprise of the club. But before Day could do anything, he was called to the principal's office. She assigned Day to investigate a spy from the kingdom who was hiding in the academy. On the way back, Day met Clarice again. Seeing that the girl looked very lonely because she preferred playing alone with insects, Day approached her and offered to befriend her, as he felt they got along very well. The girl was very happy to hear this, as Day was her first friend since birth. Clarice then said goodbye to Day and left. The next morning, in class, the professor said that there would be a skills test in a forest, and before it took place, the students had to form groups of 4 to compete. Jay and Evie would definitely be in one group, but they didn't know who to invite next, so G went to Elisa. Although she joined the group, G saw that she was self-conscious because she felt she wasn't capable enough, so G encouraged her and promised to help. Day wholeheartedly helped her. The only one left whose position Day had already reserved was none other than Eliza, much to the anger of Amb, who witnessed this. In the forest, the professor began explaining the final test. The students' destination was in the center of the forest. To reach it, the students had to pass checkpoints, collect seals, and defeat monsters in the forest. Anyone who failed would be demoted. Everyone felt very anxious, but Day didn't seem bothered at all, as this forest was very familiar to him. A moment later, the professor announced the test had begun. A flare sounded, and the whole group immediately ran into the forest. A monster was hiding and attacked Eliza, frightening her, but Day intervened and sliced the monster in 2, much to everyone's amazement. After that, they found the seal and completed the first step, while Amb's group was still struggling to find their way. Clarice was busy playing with insects. In the evening, Day's group sat together by the campfire, asking for help. With Ray's exceptional fighting skills and survival knowledge, the group's destination was closer than ever, but D still kept his skills a secret, saying, "These are just things I practiced back in my hometown because my master warned me not to reveal my true identity." Before going to sleep, everyone chatted for a long time, witnessing the 2 girls being cheerful and close, and A looking exactly like his former teammate. D wondered if he deserved to enjoy this life with everyone, but he didn't think about it anymore and urged the group to go to bed early to prepare for the next day. The next morning, he heard a scream from afar. He told everyone to go ahead, while he rushed straight to the source of the scream. Upon arriving, he saw Anne's group being attacked by a monster. Seeing Day, the monster changed its attack, but Day easily dodged it. He rushed in and neatly dealt with the monster, much to Anne's terror. Although he had just saved the monster's life, the monster didn't even thank Day, believing that Day was just... At this moment, Jay's group arrived and saw that D could single-handedly defeat the monster. Amelia became suspicious of his identity. Just then, a stranger hiding nearby witnessed everything and threw something at the monster, causing it to instantly come back to life, looking even more terrifying than before. R's group couldn't believe their eyes. The monster let out a loud roar, making Unbach's group turn pale with fear. Only Day remained, ready to take it down. Clarice's group, hearing the scream, rushed over and found Day fighting the monster alone. Seeing that it seemed difficult, Day considered using his true strength to defeat it. But not wanting Day to fight alone, Amelia used fire magic to assist. Evie also combined his strength, raising a rock and using Elle's wind magic to block the monster. Day seized this opportunity and unleashed a sword strike, splitting the monster in two. Afterward, Day noticed something very strange about the monster. Evie immediately ran over to congratulate him. Elisa was still a little scared, and they looked no different from Day's former teammates. Am still seemed resentful and couldn't accept Day. Clarice couldn't believe Day was so strong, and the stranger had also disappeared. Day's group then collected the last seal, making everyone very happy. The test ended, and Day's group was announced as ranked first, but because Day was a commoner, the group wasn't very well received. Seeing this, everyone encouraged Day not to pay attention to those people. Amelia showed contempt for the incompetent nobles, who only knew how to wail in death elsewhere. Day's master was waiting for him to visit. After nearly 60 days without seeing her student, she was more eager than ever for Day's arrival. Her anticipation was answered when Day arrived. Upon meeting Day, she found him very different from before. However, Day's injuries from the war years ago still remained, and it would take 5 years for him to recover, so she forbade him from using his abilities. He wielded ultimate power, even though he was the inheritor of the ice sword witchcraft from her. Today, his master summoned Day to inform him of a group of people who had resorted to unscrupulous methods to learn magic, such as cutting out witches' brains and extracting their knowledge for their own use. Their name was Eugen X, and they had even tried to recruit her. Of course, she refused and informed Day so he could prepare. The two then went for a walk and continued chatting. Seeing Day smiling more than before, his master pressed him for details. Day replied that since coming to school, he had made close friends. After hearing this, his master wanted Day to bring a friend to visit next time, as she wanted to see who they were and how they could have changed him. Afterward, his master informed Day that the magic swordsman competition was coming up, but Day said he wouldn't participate and would only go to cheer on his friends. Before Day left, she gave him a notebook, thinking it might be useful someday. The next morning, Day woke up very early to exercise and met Elisa. Seeing her preparing to go to the library, Day suggested they go. They then returned home and got dressed together, looking like they were going on a date, but in reality, they were going to the library to read. Elisa was looking for magic books written by her master, while Day was there to find romance novels, which greatly interested Elisa. As they went out to have lunch, Clarice saw them, but she didn't know how to start a conversation. So, Day approached and invited her along. A little embarrassed, Clarice agreed. Since both girls were introverted, Day had to introduce them so they could get acquainted. The three of them then happily ate together and said goodbye. Coincidentally, Day met Amelia getting off a carriage. Day approached her and asked how she was doing. He learned she had just returned from a noble party, which annoyed her because they had only talked about the upcoming magic swordsman competition. Day immediately complimented her outfit, saying it was very beautiful and seductive, making her happy. But when Amelia learned that Jay had just gone out to eat with 2 other girls, she felt very jealous. Since she was already dressed up nicely, she wanted to go on a date with him. The first place Amelia wanted to go was a changing room. Suddenly, a spider, planted by the author, appeared in the room, scaring Amelia so much that she ran outside and hugged Day tightly. But when she realized she was only wearing underwear, she blushed and ran back inside out of embarrassment. Seeing this, Day apologized for touching the softest part of her body. The date ended, and Day returned to the academy because the professor had called her to ask about her school life and apologized for letting him be looked down upon by those nobles. Day replied that he didn't care about that at all, and even thanked the professor for helping him make the best friends. Meanwhile, Am was being used by a stranger for revenge against Day. The next morning, Day arrived. After training at the Exploration Club, Day returned to the Flower Growing Club office. Since the other members hadn't shown up, Sarah lent Day the office key. As soon as Day opened the door, he was greeted by Rebecca's incredibly cute rabbit. He didn't know she had arrived at the office very early and was changing clothes, so she apologized and asked Day to forget about the rabbit. With a shy and embarrassed expression, Day saw that she was new. Rebecca then showed him the club's flower catalog books. Seeing Day attentively listening to her, Rebecca felt very happy. Because she was one of the 3 nobles, the other members kept their distance from her. Only Day could chat intimately with her like 2 friends. Day borrowed her book back, and the two discussed the upcoming magic sword competition. Day said he wouldn't participate and would only be there to cheer on Amelia. Rebecca then told Day that another girl from the 3 nobles would be a very strong opponent. With the upcoming tournament, Amelia was training hard. Seeing that no one in her class was a match for her, she wanted to spar with Dee to improve her skills. Dee readily accepted, also using the opportunity to further train Amelia. However, during their duel, Amelia's swordsmanship reminded Day of his former teacher. Just as Day was about to end the match, he suddenly got a headache, causing his sword to slip from his hand. The teacher immediately announced Amelia as the winner. Amelia wondered what had happened to Dee, who only smiled slightly. The group then had lunch together. When Evie praised his swordsmanship, Day replied that it was due to his master's strict training. At that moment, the half-baked nobleman Anne appeared, challenging Day to a duel. Upon arriving, everyone noticed that the dueling area was covered by a strange barrier. They were also surprised when Anne invited Day to fight with real swords instead of wooden ones. Seeing Anne charge in, he immediately picked up his sword to fight him. Nearby, the stranger, who had been intently observing the bloodthirsty expression on his face yesterday, thought there was something unusual about him. He began rambling about his unhappy past and claiming that Day was responsible for his humiliation. Anger surged within him, causing him to use fire magic with the intention of killing Day. Thinking that he couldn't hide his skills any longer, Day used his sword to cut through the flames, surprising everyone. Seeing this, Anbach became even more furious, attacking relentlessly, but couldn't hit Day even once. Helpless against Day's power, Anbach gathered all his magic and unleashed a fire spell in the form of a giant dragon. But Day easily cut it away, leaving not a trace of smoke. Everyone gasped in astonishment, while Anbach could only kneel on the ground and sob in disappointment. Seeing everyone's curiosity, he was about to reveal his identity when, at that moment, an extremely powerful spell emerged from within the barrier, causing them all to collapse to the ground. Day was still standing firm, but a stranger had suddenly appeared. It was the professor who taught him every day. Day had no choice but to fight the professor to protect Anne and his friends. At this point, he exposed the professor, revealing that she was a member of Organic and intended to kidnap the students to steal their magical memories. He claimed that during the training exercise, she was the one who controlled the monster to attack the students, and that Anne's furious challenge to Day was also orchestrated by her. The professor confirmed that everything was true. She had been eyeing Day and the other students for a long time, and now she would take their magical memories, thereby increasing her status within Organic and making the organization even stronger. The professor's words made Day feel betrayed. He vowed to take both of her arms to satisfy his anger. Without further ado, the professor created 2 fire snakes to attack Day. Seeing him only able to run and dodge, she changed her mind. His target was his friends, Day thought. Suddenly, he remembered his master's teachings. But this was the time he had to protect his friends. Day activated the power of the Ice Sword Witch to block the professor's attack, creating a vast area of ice. He then created ice swords and aimed them directly at her. At this point, Day claimed to be the one who had inherited the Ice Sword Witch's power from his master. The professor, upon hearing this, couldn't believe her eyes. This was one of the 7 greatest witches. Even so, she stubbornly used all her magic to attack Day, but to no avail. Seeing herself outmatched, she was forced to flee. Day used 2 fingers as a pointer to control the sword, striking her leg and causing her to fall. Seeing she was about to be executed, she knelt down and begged for her life. Taking advantage of Day's distraction, she continued to attack with magic, but to no avail. Without further ado, he decided to capture her alive for questioning. But at this moment, the professor played her last card. She took a vial from her necklace and injected it directly into her brain, transforming her into a monstrous creature. The terrifying barrier was instantly destroyed, and the monster continued to attack Day with fire, but all of them vanished into thin air. At this point, she demanded that Day reveal all his power. Day then played the role of a teacher and taught her the basics of magic. Ice magic would slow down all other spells, allowing Day to control them and cause them to disappear back to their original state. At this moment, Day's old wound started bleeding again. Seeing this, she used her dark power to attack him, but Day was still able to deflect her attacks. Everyone watching felt worried, as he was gradually freezing. After a while of attacking, the professor saw that Day was starting to gasp for breath. She rushed forward and broke the ice sword Day was holding. Thinking she had won, Day unexpectedly used all his power to unleash his ultimate move, Ice Chaos. In the whirlwind, she cried out in pain and transformed into a pillar of ice before the astonished eyes of everyone. Everyone else was exhausted. Day regained his strength and smiled contentedly, having saved his friends. While waiting for Day to regain consciousness, the flashback began. Day was the sole survivor of a war, rescued by his master. However, the army didn't want to keep Day because he was from another country. Furthermore, the headmistress announced that Day lived in a cursed village, making raising him very dangerous. At that moment, she received news from the enchantress Carol that Day had woken up. Seeing Day happy and playing with Carol, the headmistress felt somewhat relieved. But what worried her was that no one had adopted Day yet, as everyone was a soldier, and they couldn't let this affect the army. The next day, Carol expressed her desire to adopt Day, but everyone objected. The headmistress suggested putting Day in an orphanage. At this point, Day was standing outside and overheard everything. He approached his master and said he wanted to be with her. His master was very happy and patted his head. Later, she suggested to her superiors that she, Carol, and the headmistress would take care of Day. She would become Day's mentor and teach him all her powers. A year later, G had grown up and acquired the power of the ice sword. He and the army defeated many enemies on the far eastern battlefield, but in battle, everyone has the potential to sacrifice themselves. That day, they lost 2 witches, the Blue and Lightning witches, because they used too much power, causing their magic to go out of control. As the battle intensified, and Day was still too young, his superiors wanted him to withdraw, but Day, who considered them family, wanted to stay and fight alongside everyone. This was Guy's biggest mistake, as one of his comrades, Uncle Ha, sacrificed himself so that Day could live again. In the present, Day has woken up with his mentor and the headmistress by his side. Although he disobeyed his mentor and used his powers, she is still very proud of Day. The maid also whispered in Day's ear that his mentor is very worried about him and hopes he will recover quickly. She was reassured, and the headmaster reported that all his friends were safe and praised Day for doing very well. When his master left, she told him the truth. From the beginning, she had not agreed to let him join the academy because it was full of nobles. She didn't want someone who had suffered so much on the battlefield like him to be oppressed by the nobles. However, Master Li Di himself came to the academy and begged her to help Day so that he could live happily here with his friends and forget the painful memories of the battlefield. So she reminded Day to live happily, because that was what Li Di always wished for. After the headmaster left, his friends also came to visit. At this time, Day told everyone the truth. He was one of the 7 wizards in the Far East campaign a few years ago. When Day lost control of his magic, everything was in ruins, and only his master, wounded, was still holding him tightly. On the battlefield, he had lost a comrade, causing his master to be seriously injured, and his hands had taken countless lives. The other characters didn't know if he deserved to be with them, so everyone encouraged Day, saying that no matter what his past was like, they would still be by his side from now on. That night, Amb came to Jay's room and apologized for what he had done. Jay accepted Amb's apology and advised him not to hate others, but to acknowledge himself so that he could become stronger. Because the professor had been sent to the afterlife, the next morning, the enchanting witch Karen came to Day's class and became the official teacher. Today's lesson, Karen would explain the magic sword competition organized by the 3 royal academies, with a total of 16 contestants, each academy having its own unique strengths. She also assigned Day and Clarice the task of assisting the contestants in the competition. Carol's arrival as a teacher made Jay a little dizzy, so he went to the headmistress to ask for the reason, but she said it was for safety reasons that Karen was called there. She looked very plain and was well liked by other students, but Dee still couldn't get used to Karen's personality and wanted the principal to expel her. Just then, Karen appeared right behind him, giving Dee goosebumps and making him so scared that he ran away. After escaping Karen, Dee went to Clarice to observe and support the contestants' practice. Turning to Amelia, he saw that she had just defeated her opponent in seconds, but she didn't seem very happy. Dee wondered what was wrong with Amelia. It turned out that Amelia was the eldest daughter of the Rose family, the head of the 3 great noble families. Therefore, her father couldn't accept her losing to other families, especially a girl named Arian from the O family. Dee asked Rebecca and learned that the girl studied at the Diem school next door and was just as strong as Amelia. Although she wasn't easy to deal with, everyone hoped Amelia would perform well. As for her, she currently maintained her record of defeating other opponents in seconds. Anby would also participate because he ranked second only to Amelia. She was still under a lot of pressure because of her father's expectations, so Day had to find a way to help her. That afternoon, Jay met with Amelia. Knowing she was very worried about the upcoming match against Arian, Day said that within a month from now until the match, he would train her with a special course. The exercises would come from the rookie training notebook that his master had left to Day. Knowing that this was what made Day stronger, Amelia became more determined than ever. That night, Amelia suddenly remembered her childhood memories with Arian. Both of them came from noble families and were the same age, so they were very close friends. They had promised to remain best friends until they grew up, and Amelia had to bear the expectations of her family. Losing to Arian had disappointed Amelia, and from then on, the two gradually drifted apart. Now, Amelia's purpose in life was to become stronger than ever, so that in the rematch, she could defeat Arian. The next day, she went to meet Day, and he was also there. Day appeared cool and stylish, wearing a mask on his pendant, saying he would play the role of instructor while she would be the trainee. He then ordered Amelia to run 20 kilometers without using any body enhancement spells. Day's terrifying appearance frightened Amelia, forcing her to obey. However, on the first day, Amelia was breathless and collapsed in class like a zombie. In the following days, the intensity of the training increased, making her feel like it was hell on earth. Waking up one morning, Day himself woke her up, leaving Amelia speechless. Because Day made noise in the girls' dormitory that morning, Rebecca and Dina complained to him. Amelia seized this opportunity to escape, unable to bear it any longer. On the way to find Amelia, Day met Amb sitting alone, feeling depressed. Seeing Amb still worried about the competition, Day encouraged him, boosting his confidence. He ran to the library but only found Elisa and Clarice. Amelia was nowhere to be seen, so Day used his special ability to locate her. While she was hiding alone in a corner, Day stealthily approached from behind. Anyone attempting to skip training would be severely punished. Then Day grabbed Amelia's hand and pulled her to the training area. Meanwhile, he went to the Hunter Club and asked them to form a cheerleading squad for Amelia. He also borrowed something suspicious from the club president. The next morning, Evie was surprised to see a girl coming out of her room. It was Dee in disguise. He also went to the field to remind Amelia to train hard. As he passed Rebecca, she seemed to recognize him, but Day ignored her and headed straight to Arnold Academy. It turned out Arnold Academy was all female, so yesterday he had borrowed a girl's uniform from the club president. He hid in a cardboard box, waiting for an opportunity to approach and investigate Arian. But the person he met was her younger sister, Tiana. Seeing Tiana crying because she had lost her sister, Day promised to help her find her. He disguised himself as a girl, looking even prettier than a real girl, causing the other students to gasp in admiration. No one could have imagined what would happen next. In the body of a male, after walking a short distance, the two finally found Arian. Arian approached her to introduce himself, and after talking for a while, she realized he wasn't a student there. At that moment, his voice reverted to a male voice, surprising Arian. He confessed that he had used magic to transform his body and voice into a girl's. Arian also heard that Arian was very strong, so she challenged him to a sword duel. This was exactly what Arian wanted, so he accepted. At first, they seemed evenly matched, but she unexpectedly used magic on her sword, breaking it in two. Upon learning the result of the match, Arian said goodbye to the two and left. Arian then revealed to Arian that he was actively training Arian to defeat her in the upcoming match. Seeing this, Arian eagerly awaited the rematch with his old friend. When Arian returned to school, it was late afternoon, and before him was a girl running very fast. She suddenly tripped and fell, but, luckily, Day was caught in the arms of someone as beautiful as Day, causing her to blush. She then stood up, thanked Day, and introduced herself. "My name is Maria, Rebecca's younger sister. Initially, I didn't intend to study here, but when I learned that Day was studying at this school, I decided to try my best to pass the entrance exam next year, so I could study with him." Meanwhile, Amelia was diligently training when Day arrived. Knowing that Day had decided to dress up as a girl today, all three were speechless. The next morning, Jay took his friends to visit his master, and the happiest person was Amelia, who had finally escaped Jay's hellish training. Upon arrival, Jay began introducing his friends. Seeing Evie's imposing physique, the master remarked that he had great potential. Eliza, with her round breasts and innocent face, also appealed to Amelia. Clarice seemed shy and spoke with a slight lisp. As for Amelia, the master already knew her and wanted to speak to her privately. Day went to his maid, and she revealed a secret to him. Believing that an imperial assassination organization would interfere with the sword competition, Jay warned him to be careful. Regarding Amelia, her master told her that the letters Jay had sent recently showed great concern for her. Seeing Jay show such special attention to someone else for the first time, her master was very happy. She told Amelia that if she had anything to hide, she should tell Jay everything, as Jay would certainly help her wholeheartedly. Since the visit ended, Amelia had been practicing diligently and seriously more than ever. It must be acknowledged that she was clearly getting stronger. A month later, the sword competition between the three royal academies officially opened. After the headmaster's speech announcing the start of the competition, Arian also met with Amelia privately, and the two agreed to settle the winner in the final match. Later, the first match took place, a duel between Amelia and a person named Snail from the Royal Academy. Rose was in the stands. Everyone was cheering enthusiastically, and the headmaster reiterated the rules of the competition. Falling off the arena or cutting off the rose on the opponent's chest would be the winner. After the start signal, the opponent immediately charged at Amelia with their sword, but she simply dodged lightly behind her and cast a fire spell, burning the rose on the opponent's chest to ashes. The first match ended very quickly, and Amelia was the winner. Meanwhile, G went to Amb to encourage him because the next match seemed a bit difficult for him as his opponent was Arian. Initially, Amb's fighting was very impressive, and the two looked evenly matched, but in the end, Arian was stronger, and Amb was knocked down. At this point, Arian advised Amb to surrender because continuing would be very dangerous for him, but because he had heard Day's words before, he wouldn't give up. Amb continued to charge in and unexpectedly disarmed Arian, but she used her strength to break Amb's sword and then delivered a punch that sent him flying off the arena. Although he was defeated, Jay was still content because he hadn't given up. Meanwhile, outside, the person nicknamed Death God had sneaked into the competition. Feeling something was amiss, Jay went to investigate. At that moment, someone attempted to ambush him but was immediately dealt with. Jay was surprised. The person who attacked was the president of the Hunter Club. When Jay returned to the principal's office, his master and Carol were waiting. Hearing his master's words, Jay learned that the maid who always served his master was the kingdom's #1 spy, and the president of the Hunter Club, Lahal, was her younger brother. The principal then informed Jay that the Death Gods had infiltrated the competition venue, and their target was the noble students. Jay and Lex's mission was to raise awareness and ensure the safety of the students and the competition. His master also allowed Jay to use his powers if necessary, as this competition was extremely important to Amelia, so Jay would use all his strength to stop them. The next day was the competition day for the students. The top student and the winner of the first match was Rebecca, who was also the champion of the previous magic sword competition. This time, she will try to defend her title. Meanwhile, Dee received news that Amelia had been locking herself in her room since yesterday, causing everyone to worry. On the battlefield, the winner of the next match was Lucas from MOS High School. He just set a record for winning a match in 2 seconds and glanced at Day with a challenging look. The second day of competition ended. Arian was diligently practicing for her matches against Amelia, as this was the first-year final between two close friends, so she would try her best. After training with Evie, Day went to the girls' dormitory and saw Eliza and Clarice looking very worried. He immediately went to Amelia's room from outside and tried to speak to her so that she could hear him. Day said that he didn't know what was bothering her that was causing her to avoid everyone, but he would try to reach Amelia's heart to resolve her troubles. After hearing this, Amelia went outside to open the door and invite Day into the room. She shared that she felt immense pressure as the eldest daughter of one of the 3 great families, but she wasn't strong enough like Day to live up to her father's expectations. She thought she couldn't defeat Arian, and this made her so distressed that she didn't want to live anymore. Understanding Amelia's thoughts, Day comforted her, saying that winning or losing didn't matter because those were not the purpose of her existence. Only the joys and sorrows and the company of close friends were the purpose of her life. No matter the outcome of the match, Day promised to always be by her side and walk with her. Hearing this, Amelia cried loudly, hugged Day tightly, and soon fell asleep from exhaustion. At this point, Day wanted to leave, but Amelia held his hand and kept him there until he fell asleep. Remembering their training sessions together, Day felt confident that she would be the winner in the upcoming match. The next morning, the rookie final between Amelia and Arian took place. Day told everyone that Amelia was fine because he had been with her since last night. Everyone was astonished, wondering what the two of them had done all night to cause Amelia to change so much. Clarice was rushing to the competition venue, but a member of the Death Order was following her. Day went to Amelia's side to prepare her for battle. Before entering the arena, Amelia wanted Day to hug her for strength. Fax, feeling something was wrong, wanted to find Day. He informed Day that Clarice and 8 other noble students had gone missing, but the two remained calm and split up to search. Meanwhile, Karen returned to the commentary area to announce the start of the rookie final. On the arena, both girls eagerly awaited this rematch to prove their strength. As soon as the match began, Arian threw her sword into the air, then used her strength to hurl it towards Amelia, unexpectedly circling behind her opponent and delivering a blow that left Amelia stunned. A scene unfolded, and everyone recognized it as the technique she had used to defeat Anbeck. On the battlefield, Arian continued her relentless attacks, making it seem as though Amelia was on the verge of defeat. However, she managed to repel Arian thanks to the strength she had gained from training with Day. At this point, Arian was at a disadvantage, constantly parrying Amelia's attacks. Day, after searching for a while, found Clarice and other students unconscious in the basement. He woke Clarice up and realized the area was filled with interfering magic. Along with that, the Grim Reapers had surrounded them. Seeing this, Day hoisted Clarice onto his shoulder and ran a short distance to activate his ice sword power. He then summoned ice swords and fought back against them, while Clarice screamed in fear. One of them unexpectedly used magic to obscure Day's vision, but Day immediately used his power to neutralize it. Seeing the power was too strong, they tried to retreat, but Day created a vast ice field, freezing them in place. In the blink of an eye, both girls on the arena still seemed desperate for a fight. At this moment, Arian unleashed her lightning power, enveloping her body in thunder and lightning. Knowing this was Arian's finishing move, Amelia attacked first, but Arian's speed increased too rapidly, leaving Amelia with no time to react. As a result, she took a powerful punch from Arian, but luckily, she wasn't thrown out of the arena. At this moment, Amelia thought she couldn't win anymore, but the power of friendship and love within her surged. Along with that, a shout from Dee awakened a new power within her, much to Jaiko's surprise. Jaiko said that from now on, Arian wouldn't be able to touch her anymore. Butterflies surrounded Amelia, which she called the butterfly effect. Arian continued to attack with incredible speed, but couldn't hit Amelia again. Karen explained that this was a special magic that almost no one used anymore. It made the opponent think they had attacked accurately, but in reality, they were being repelled by the butterfly effect. From then on, Arian couldn't touch Amelia even once. After a while of attacking without success, Arian finally ran out of strength, while Amelia seemed to have used up a lot of power, blood continuously flowing from her nose. Above the stands, two fathers were very worried about their daughters, fearing that if the fight continued, Amelia might lose control of her magic like he had before. Both girls then used up all their magic power in their final spells, neither willing to give way, so they had to switch to physical combat to decide the winner amidst the cheers from the stands. Although very tired, they still charged at each other with joyful expressions and decisive blows. The match ended with Arian lying on Amelia's lap, praising her for being much stronger than before. But Amelia said that it was thanks to Day and her friends that she was able to be where she is today, and the person who made her stronger was none other than Arian. Because she was always the best, Arian always reminded Amelia to try harder. At this moment, Arian admitted that she always wanted to be a role model for Amelia to follow, so that both families could be proud of their children, and because of this, the two had been separated. After a very long time, she hugged Amelia and apologized from the bottom of her heart, promising that they would always be best friends. The final match ended, and Amelia was crowned the rookie champion. Arian's father seemed pleased with the result, but Amelia's father wasn't so happy. He always wanted his daughter to be stronger. Meanwhile, Day visited Amelia after the match. After her tireless training, Day saw that she possessed a great deal of strength he had never known before. But what she valued most wasn't her strength, but Day's promise to always be by her side. Day then wanted to shake Amelia's hand to congratulate her on her victory after all her efforts, but one of her hands had become like Doraemon's, so she had to use the other. At that moment, she thought that no matter how much pressure she faced, she would hold her head high and overcome it because she wanted to continue living with her friends in this world. The next day, everyone continued to cheer for Amelia. Rebecca, the third male contestant, and her opponent, Lucas, the young man from the previous day, were also present. Jay recognized Maria, Rebecca's younger sister, standing in a corner of the stands. On the field, the match between the two contestants was announced to begin, but before Rebecca could move, Lucas unexpectedly unleashed a technique called fading light. He cast a spell under his feet, causing Rebecca to lose all vision. He then drew his sword and gently plucked the rose from her chest in an instant, before slowly sheathing it in the astonished eyes of the audience. Lucas was then announced as the champion. Before Rebecca could understand what was happening, Lucas approached and greeted Jay. Jay recognized him as the Ice Sword Sorcerer, thanks to the sword he had used. Lucas's goal was to challenge the Ice Sword Sorcerer to prove that the Ice Sword Sorcerer was the strongest. He then left, promising to meet Jay again next year. The headmaster, along with the master and Karen, were heading towards the death gods that Jay had captured after using them for entertainment. Karen began using her enchantress abilities to force them to reveal information, but one by one, they were killed by a strange spell to silence them, leaving everyone with no clues. Meanwhile, the swordsmanship competition was beginning its closing ceremony. The happiest people were Amelia and Arian, as they had reunited. The saddest was probably Rebecca, seeing her father return after her defeat. After the swordsmanship competition ended, the school's anniversary celebration began. Earlier, Day had discussed with Amelia the idea of the class opening a maid cafe because she loved maid outfits and wanted to try wearing one to serve her master. However, when Day presented the idea to the class, the girls objected, saying they were nobles and shouldn't have to serve others. But when they saw the outfit she had chosen, when Carol modeled the outfit, the whole class agreed without hesitation. Just as the Maid Cafe event was over, Day unexpectedly received news from Sarah that Rebecca was about to get engaged to some young man. It turned out that her father had previously been involved in a terrible deal with this man, and the stake in the deal was Rebecca, his daughter. This man was a member of the organic group, and they were currently devouring the memories of sorcerers. According to them, Rebecca was the vessel of a terrifying power. Possessing Rebecca would allow them to pursue their plan to restore the empire. That was why they wanted her at all costs. The next morning, Day met Rebecca again in the school's flower garden. He had heard the news of her upcoming wedding and had come to congratulate her. Although Rebecca still smiled as usual, Day realized she didn't want this at all. Later, Day returned to the school office and found Amelia and Elisa discussing the maid outfit. Although slightly, it was revealing, but Amelia felt Elisa would look very beautiful in it, so she wanted Elisa to wear a maid outfit for everyone to enjoy. Jay agreed and immediately expressed his desire to see Elisa in a maid outfit, making her so embarrassed that she had to agree. Witnessing Jay showering Elisa with sweet words, Amelia gave him a kick in the butt because she felt very jealous. Returning to class, she saw that the boys' group had already prepared everything. They were all working very enthusiastically to see the cute girls in maid outfits. When they heard that Jay had convinced Elisa, everyone was even happier. At this point, Jay had learned a truth from Anby, that men who don't like maid outfits don't exist in this world. While reporting to the student council, he immediately stated that truth. Jay suddenly realized that many members of the student council hadn't come to the meeting today. At this moment, Rebecca revealed the truth. Her fiancé, Even, was actually engaged from before, with Say, a member of the student council. It was as if Rebecca had stolen her fiancé, causing her to be ostracized. Upon learning of this, Jay decided to put aside his club activities to help her because Rebecca had helped him so much since arriving, and now he had to wholeheartedly repay her kindness. But before Jay acted, Dina informed him that Rebecca's engagement was definitely orchestrated by Even, but she didn't want to reveal it, for fear of implicating Dina. Now, the only person who could save Rebecca was Jay. After hearing this, Jay told Dina to rest assured, as he was certain he could resolve the matter. That night, he went to his master to ask her who Even was. She told Jay that he was a high-ranking nobleman, trusted by the 3 great noble families. But upon noticing the unusual circumstances surrounding the engagement, she sent her maid, La, to investigate. At this point, his master asked about the reason for opening the cafe. When Day was being teased about his maid, he immediately reiterated ABC's truth. Every man likes maids, and Day is no exception, especially the outfits the girls are wearing. Just hearing the word maid makes him think only of the girls. His master, upon hearing this, couldn't help but feel envious. But she also wanted to know what she would look like in a maid outfit. Day couldn't help but laugh. But when his master got angry, he had to kneel and apologize. Meanwhile, Rebecca was recalling the moment she met Dee on the battlefield, with one of her yellow eyes bleeding. She couldn't understand why she kept having that dream lately. Maria noticed something unusual about her sister. Seeing Maria worried about the upcoming engagement, she said she would be fine, that it was just a wedding between nobles. But when she returned to her room, Rebecca sat down and cried alone. Maria couldn't bear to see her sister, who had once cared for her, suffer like this. She went to Rebecca's room to ask what was wrong, but she didn't tell her sister, not wanting her to be involved in this matter. Maria felt very sad after hearing this, but she wouldn't give up. The next day, the school's anniversary celebration took place in Dee's class, with alluring maid costumes. Amelia looked very beautiful, prompting Dee to shower her with compliments. Elisa was equally beautiful, making him unable to take his eyes off her. Only Clarice looked a little strange, because her class was doing a haunted house event, not maid costumes. That evening, on his way back, Jay met Rebecca again. He offered to take her home, but because she was engaged, she was no longer in the dormitory. The two walked and talked for a while, then unexpectedly ran into Even. He immediately thanked Jay for escorting Rebecca there, and then offered to take her home instead. At this moment, Jay remembered Dina's words that Even was plotting something. At the same time, the club president arrived, and the two returned to the principal's office. After an investigation, everyone concluded that the engagement was entirely Even's doing. He was a member of Organic and a collector of magical eyes. The target he was aiming for was Rebecca's powerful eyes, and she was suffering terribly under his threat. What Even desired was her eyes, but she wouldn't let him touch them. Rebecca knew that her father had made a deal with him so that he could rise to the top of the 3 great noble families. If she disobeyed, he would harm her younger sister Maria. It turned out that Even had done all this because what he craved was Rebecca's eyes. which resonated with her past. Thanks to them, she saw painful memories of Day's time on the battlefield with her master. After helping with the student council's work, Dina reminded him to go outside because someone wanted to see him. It turned out to be Maria, and the girl showed clear concern for her sister. She couldn't let her sister, who had once cared for her, suffer. Seeing this, Day took Maria's hand and promised to do everything to protect her sister. Those words deeply moved Maria, so she gently rested her head on Day's chest. Meanwhile, Rebecca stood outside and witnessed the scene. All of this made it impossible for her to sleep that night. She kept thinking about what had happened that afternoon, making her incredibly jealous of her younger sister. And that day, before going to bed, Jay had read a fairy tale. It was a love story between a demon girl and a human boy. Although the plot was very sad, Jay still hoped it would have a happy ending, just like the ending in Rebecca's current story. A little later, Jay fell asleep and dreamt of what had happened on the battlefield. While everyone was mourning Harvard, a completely unrelated person, Rebecca, suddenly appeared. When Jay turned to ask what was wrong, Jay was startled awake. His eyes were also bleeding, just like Rebecca's earlier. The next morning, Jay woke up very early to exercise and met Rebecca in the flower garden as usual. Because it was the first day of the school's anniversary celebration, Rebecca had arranged for Jay to fully enjoy himself with everyone. At the school gate, Arian and Tiana had arrived at the ceremony to look for her. Amelia and Maria, upon seeing a maid cafe, immediately went inside. Upon entering, Maria looked around for Day, but couldn't find him. Just then, Day, dressed as a cute girl, walked in and started sending heart gestures, leaving everyone, including Maria, speechless with surprise. Day then went to Maria and served her an egg roll, continuing to send heart gestures, causing Maria to have a nosebleed. Even Maria couldn't believe it. Day's cross-dressing was even cuter than her own. Afterward, Day went to Rebecca and took her out. Because Maria had shown her the way, despite a little shyness, she still held Day's hand. The two then went on dates to various places at the festival. At the end of the first day, Rebecca thanked Day for going with her. She had something she wanted to tell him, but decided against it. Meanwhile, on Maria's way home, she unexpectedly encountered a woman with hair identical to her own. The woman informed Maria that Rebecca was about to die. Day and everyone else had just received the news. Rebecca was about to be in danger when her father arrived, pleading with Day to save his daughter. A few moments later, he returned to his room worried, so Evie encouraged him and promised to help him with everything she could. Meanwhile, the organic group was eagerly awaiting tomorrow, as Rebecca's true power would awaken the next morning. While Jay was exercising, Rebecca was waiting in the garden. She had to leave today to follow Even, so she had asked Day to look after Maria. The headmaster and everyone else were also preparing for the battle with Organic. Meanwhile, Even had taken Rebecca somewhere. Maria came to ask Day for some courage before going to save her sister. Jay, seeing this, also prepared to follow Maria. Jay's friends were plotting to help him. Rebecca had been taken to a place far from the academy. There, Even had used magic to create a barrier, and now he was going to destroy her. At this moment, Dee was on his way there and encountered something. When Organic's horde of monsters became too numerous, and Day found it difficult to fight them, Amelia and her companions appeared to help him. Day fought alongside them, eliminating all of their minions. After clearing the obstacles, a large monster appeared and attacked Amelia, but Day blocked it. His accomplice, sensing trouble, ordered him to go ahead and assist with the plan. Seeing this, everyone in Day's group told him to chase after the monster and leave the area to them. At this moment, Day remembered his father Rebecca's words, that since birth she had possessed the power of a saint and magical eyes, attracting the attention of many evil people. Maria was also affected by this power, causing her body and hair to turn white. Therefore, he couldn't let his two daughters suffer anymore, so he came to Day for help. Meanwhile, Maria reached Rebecca's location before he could kill her sister. Just then, a stranger appeared at that spot. When the mask was removed, everyone was surprised to find that he was the real Even Beastie, and the imposter was actually a white-haired girl named LCA. After 10 years of not seeing each other, Even harbored a deep hatred for LCE and attacked her. He believed that LC had controlled his heart, causing him to become like this, and to maintain his family lineage, he had lived in humiliation for the past 10 years. Therefore, right here, he would kill LC and go to the world of truth to accomplish his goal. He needed Rebecca's saintly power, but LCA wouldn't let him have his wish. She broke free from LCA's control to protect Rebecca. She used magic to bring Rebecca behind her, then created a spatial portal and sent Steve, even through it. Seeing Maria's slight worry, she said that Day would handle everything. Just then, Jay arrived and greeted the gluttonous guy from Organic, named Para, a specialist in stealing the memories of witches. Seeing Dace as a delicious meal, he lunged at Even, but Lacey E stopped him. She created an invisible shield, and inside, she spoke to Day, revealing that she was a fantasy witch, and had planned this. Day said that to save Rebecca, she would make her lose control of her magic. Then Day would seal away the saintly power. Because the two resonated with each other, only Day could save Rebecca, and saving Rebecca was also the deal between her father and Lelcy. At this moment, Para broke through the shield, so Lelcy asked Day to stop him. Day activated his ice sword power and began fighting Para, while C went into the spatial portal to take care of Even. When Even saw Lelcy, hatred surged within him. He activated the power of the Death Triangle, just like the professor after injecting the drug, and his head became a monster. But L then activated the self-destruct power of the Fantasy Witch, causing Even's power to vanish immediately. Even then, he believed that the Fantasy Witch was the strongest, which was why he failed. L said that the strongest witch is the Ice Sword Witch, and if anyone can rule this world, it can only be Day. Meanwhile, Day's friends had dealt with the monsters outside, thinking everything was over, but unexpectedly, they came back to life, just like in the forest. However, their attacks were stopped because the headmaster and the witches arrived. They said the students had done very well, and they would personally handle the rest. It had been a long time since the witches had fought together like this. Witnessing the witches easily overwhelm the monsters, the students couldn't help but admire them. To end the nightmare for them, Day's master unleashed her ultimate ice sword technique, Doomsday. She created a giant ice sword and swept everything around her, leaving everyone speechless at her ferocity. Meanwhile, D was still fighting Para. Knowing the ice sword was very powerful, he used all his strength. In an instant, he punched Day away with his demonic attack. Maria saw this. Day, being beaten up, immediately blamed Rebecca for not telling anyone from the beginning, which is why things turned out this way. Para, seeing Day weakened, thought this was the perfect time to take him down. He pushed Day against the wall to slowly savor his magical memories, but Day changed the magic within his body, creating red swords. He used them to attack Para and escape his control, then poured all his strength into Para, freezing him. At this point, Day was completely exhausted and collapsed. Rebecca wanted to save him, but she still hadn't acknowledged her own fault. Maria gave her a nudge to make Rebecca understand her sister's thoughts, but Rebecca wouldn't give up. She pinned her sister down and said that she herself had suffered a lot, but no one understood. Even so, she was always worried about everyone, especially Maria. So Rebecca cried, begging her sister not to blame her anymore. At that moment, her crying caused her to lose consciousness. Rebecca, who had lost control of her powers, had also regained consciousness, while Elle and Even had returned from the spatial portal. She said Even was only seduced by a demon, which caused her to go insane. The headmaster and everyone else also arrived, worried that Rebecca was losing control of her powers. But Day coldly arrived and told Maria not to worry. He went to Rebecca and said that Maria loved her very much. It was just that everyone hadn't understood each other yet, causing each of them to carry their own burdens. Then Day leaned close to Rebecca, making her think he wanted to kiss her, but in reality, he only activated his magic to seal the saint's power. When they learned that Jay had saved Rebecca and Maria, their father was very happy. Amelia, on the other hand, felt very jealous of Rebecca when she learned what Jay had done for her. Even more annoyed when she heard Rebecca say that Jay and she were going to spend the night together, Amelia became even more upset. But the spending the night, Rebecca mentioned, was just watching fireworks with Day. Seeing that Amelia also liked Day like herself, Rebecca challenged her to a duel. Amelia immediately accepted, saying she would definitely not lose to Rebecca in this battle of love. However, the two girls forgot that they had two more formidable rivals. And then all four girls, along with Day, went to watch the fireworks together. The next morning, Day went to Uncle Harvard's grave to report to him that life at the academy was very enjoyable and thank him for letting him enjoy it. Although Jay had taken many lives in the war, he now had very good friends who were willing to overlook the past and accept him. On his way home, he met Arian again, and she invited Day to participate in a large-scale magic battle. The anime ends here. What happens next? See you in the next part when it airs. Goodbye and see you again.